Good morning, Mr. Court.
Good morning, Professor.
Not a professor.
Well, not with a capital P, but
Yes, I do profess a few things, but
yeah.
not a professor.
I was just checking my email before we started, and I came across an alert for a very interesting article in the medium.com essay
Yeah.
site.
Yeah.
And it's a bit alarmist. It's about the potential of an great American collapse. It's a 5-minute read, and I think if not today, maybe on Sunday, we should take a look. I'll put the link.
It's not alarmist. It's happening.
Yeah, well, that's the point of the article, is that it is happening and it's well underway. And that's sort of the point of this article, that it may be more realistic than alarmist. But I was just starting to read it when you started the session here.
You know, I didn't start, but I joined a series of conversations in January or February of 2011, started by a fellow in Palo Alto, no, actually Northern California, named Douglas Carmichael. I've mentioned him before. But he and others were already predicting that society was getting so out of balance.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Yep.
So money and power driven by the upper 0.01%.
Yep.
That it was predicted that oligarchy would hire 1/3 of us to protect us from the other third, when most of us realize that we can't keep this society going. It's unfair, and we've got to, redesign it. And we're coming after the power hungry. So
Yeah.
they're ready to hire private armies. And you can see that's happening with police. It's happening with militia. It's happening with the survivalist mentality. It's happening with Proud Boys. That's already happening. So it's not alarmist. What's alarming to me is that more people don't see it.
Was it Jamie Dimon? I try to remember the professor who did
Jared
Diamond, who did a talk on all the signs of civilization collapse, historical, and then parallels to modern times. So yeah, there's plenty of, very serious thinkers who've observed that we are on the threshold of a potential collapse if we don't seriously, restructure our culture.
And by the way, Isaac Asimov, several decades ago, wrote the Foundation series,
Yep.
predicting exactly this.
Yep. There's Joshua.
So I haven't seen it yet. I've heard it's good, but I've also heard it's not close to the books.
Oh, you're talking about the movie?
Yeah, the Foundation series.
I guess I heard that it was made into a movie. I actually have the book sitting on the shelf right to my left, but I actually haven't read them.
Yeah, I think I reread them every 15 or 20 years.
Yeah. Hi, Tees.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So for those of you who have,
we're going into the time change tomorrow, this night. So you change your hours already, I think.
No, not
No,
yet.
we have not.
I think the Sunday after Halloween, is it?
Yeah, I think it's happening. Yeah, you're right. It's probably next week for us.
Oh, so that's means I'm in time for today. And next week it might be different.
Yeah. No, you're right on time, within 2 minutes of on time today.
Yeah, there's like a 2-week gap between Europe and America changing daylight to standard time.
Which is why, by the way, when I list the time, I don't list it in Central Time. I don't list it in whatever. I list it in Pacific Time, and people can do the translation. On Doug's event,
daylight time.
No, Pacific Time.
Which is daylight time now.
No. I always list it in Pacific Time. Daylight or standard.
Yeah, you leave out the middle initial.
Exactly. And Doug's event, when I announce it, I always announce it East Coast time, ET,
Yeah.
and people can do their translations.
Doug leaves the S in it year round, and he says he's not going to change it.
Well, if it's daylight savings time, he's still starting at 11.
Yeah.
So that's not entirely accurate, but
Yeah.
it's a nit. Anyway, for those, we were talking about the Foundation series, right? You and I, Barry.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah. You
those who
brought
don't
up.
recognize, when I talk about collaborology and I talk about a mathematics of collaborology, it's psychohistory I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really a hard prediction. I mean, prophets of yore have been making similar predictions, all the way back to biblical times and maybe even before. They're not uncommon in the literature. A lot
Predictions
of
are one thing.
Yeah.
But being more precise is something else. I'm thinking that he was proposing that you could be precise about it.
Yeah. And that's sort of what Jared Diamond tried to do, was sort of tick off all the check marks of the portends, the signs, the omens, the whatnots.
Yeah, Diamond's an interesting guy. I really like listening to him. He's got an interesting accent. He's got interesting delivery. He's got fascinating ideas. And he's seen a lot. He spent so many years in Papua New Guinea.
I'm trying to look it up, but it will take too long. Can you give me a little summary of what the Foundation series is? I see it's science fiction.
Ooh, I would love to. Anybody else here a Foundation fan who'd like to take that on? All right, I'll do it. Okay, so this guy who's pioneered a field of mathematics that he calls psychohistory has developed this because he thinks he can use mathematics. Yeah, there you go. I think I have 2 or 3 sets of that.
Yeah, 3 volumes.
Yep.
These are the paperback sets.
Yeah, those are the original 3. So anyway, psychohistory he develops because he can use mathematics and precise mathematics to understand human behavior, social behavior, civilization behavior, and he can actually use that mathematics to predict what's going to happen. So his psychohistory mathematics tells him that the galaxy, which is, the world, several thousand years in the future, is about to enter this dark ages of 20 or 30,000 years. And he says it's inevitable according to his mathematics. And everybody, including the emperor, and I think in this series they make him a triclone emperor, says, oh, you can't be right. We're thriving. We're a galactic empire. You're just stupid. You're silly. So given that nobody listens to him, he sets up what's called a foundation, basically a place where he can save and store and keep safe all the knowledge of civilization so that, if we enter the dark ages, at least one place, it's like the Library of Alexandria, but, in a galactic.
It's like a Noah's Ark, but not of
for knowledge. Yeah, for knowledge. Okay. And he further says, because he's able to see this coming, he's able to take steps so that he can shorten what I think he's called the interregnum, the 20 or 30,000 years of darkness to only 1 or 2,000 years if he takes certain steps. So he sets up this foundation, and he sets up these people who really, really believe in science and reasoning and technology and whatever, and that's called the Foundation. But there's a twist, and I'm not going to tell you what the twist is. Okay, I'll let you watch the movie without giving away that spoiler.
Now, which movie would I be watching?
Oh, it's a series that's been made, and it's I think on Apple Plus or Apple TV or something like that. It's called the Foundation series. And reputedly, it's not very close to the books. And I don't have Apple TV, so I don't know yet whether it's going to be enjoyable for those who know the book. But I've heard people who don't know the book watched it and say, it's beautiful. It's eye candy. It's really well made from a movie making experience. But I just don't know how close it is to the movie.
Got it. Thank you. Sounds very interesting.
That's my recollection of the series. And like I say, it's been 10 or 15 years since I read it because I only read it, again, every 15 or 20 years. Mm-hmm. Barry, you like those books, obviously. What's your recollection of it?
Actually, I didn't read the Foundation. I have
it. You have it, but you haven't read it?
Somebody gave
You're
me
waving those
old,
books around?
Those old waterlogged paperback editions, somebody gave them to me years ago, and I put them on the shelf, planning to read them someday, and someday hasn't yet come.
Someday is here, Barry.
So I actually don't know the content of the story, the sci-fi drama that's in them.
Anyway, I find Asimov is a great prolific generator of ideas, but I find his writing difficult. It's not great writing, but his ideas are good.
Yeah, I read some of his stuff, but I just never got around to opening that trilogy.
Anyway,
And
it could be entirely wrong. Other people who are way more experienced with the foundation could just say, I just completely missed the mark, but that's my recollection of it.
Well, there's a lot of reason to think that civilizations do go down the tubes. They go to war and they go down the tubes.
It's inevitable. It happens to every civilization.
Yep.
It's happening to the US right now.
Right. In fact, I just before everybody else came on, I just posted to Sam an item that just showed up in today's announcements. I'll repost it.
By the way, we're still in gathering mode. So if anybody wants to check in, please feel comfortable to do so.
Yes, I'll check in some, but just some news from the European Union. I will put it in the chat. There will be Digital Services Act is in the making in the European Parliament, and the Digital Market Act is in the making. So it's just like the GDPR, it will have a huge impact. So we're planning as the EU to have such an impact again now on the digital market and digital services.
So what are the main provisions?
I did not read it, so I just heard it this week. So I just announced it's coming, and I don't know the content, but I know the disturbance here for all the data leaking out to the big tech firms. So we want to have more control on all the data that is gathered and that is distributed worldwide.
Is there commentary on how that's going to affect all the social media companies? Like,
you will find out. I don't know, because that's why I have to find it now in Google and put it in the chat. And then I share it now here. It's new to me.
you know, your quote just reminded me that way back several years ago when there was what, TPP or some other act, you know, that was being discussed in the US. And it was such a big document and it was very secretly handled. People couldn't even read it. And there was a lot of discussion about what's in the act, you know, what's in it, what are the provisions? And some stupid politicians would say something like, pass it and you'll find out. Such a stupid statement.
Right. Take the red pill or the blue pill, find out what it does.
Thanks for checking in, Thies. But that was more about the EU than a check-in, but that's okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll check in. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I have too much. I don't know where to start. You
Is
can
it about
go
you or is it more about ideas to put on the table?
both, because that's how life works.
The zeitgeist rises.
You can go, because maybe some of what I'll say will lead to what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Because it's,
Well, let's see what I was about to say. I took Thursday off to buy myself a toy.
ooh, what'd you buy?
Well, ever since they came out in the, what, 90s, Lexus had this series of cars called the SC. It's either SC 300 or SC 400. And at that time, I thought that was the cleanest looking car I'd ever seen. Clean lines, timeless, you know, beautiful design. Not only that, the engines were state of the art back then. And so it was like a dream of mine for the last 30 years that eventually at some point I might actually get one of those. So anyway, it's just, you know, a guy in a car kind of a thing. But I finally found one. It was a 1998 model. It only had 57,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And it was going for reasonably high price, but it was in excellent condition. So I decided to use part of my bonus from my comp this year and drive down. It was about 4 hours away, actually 4.5 hours away. So I had to drive down 4.5 hours and take a risk that I would actually end up buying the car and then have to, deal with getting my original car back whenever. But Gail, my girlfriend, drove down with me in her car. So we took her car, and then yes, I did buy the car after I had it inspected by Toyota. So I made sure that they inspected it nicely. They came back with some recommendations, but it was like for Toyota and Lexus prices, about $3,000 worth of reward repairs. And I've looked at other cars. I've done this with other cars, and most cars come up with much more that needs to be repaired. So 3,000 I thought was actually relatively little. It's relatively standard for cars of that age. So I bought it, and now I have a toy that I've always been coveting. Yes, I agree. I've been coveting it. I've been attached to it.
What color?
Huh? It's white.
What color? What color?
It's white.
I like it white. I like white.
It's white with tan leather inside.
You gonna give it a name?
No, I haven't. I've never given any of my cars names.
Me neither.
Yeah, I think women do that more than men, but
Really?
some people
What,
do.
No,
what
I
would you,
don't.
Not
what would
true.
you name a white
says not
Lexus
true.
SC?
No,
Basically,
I've loved my cars and never named them.
Well, being the only other woman, Kayla, do you name your cars?
Nope.
So Barry,
I've
you're 0 out
never-
of 2.
I've never named my cars, no. But
But you
I
used to,
knew
huh?
people who did, and of course, I don't know, maybe it's just a very small sample that was more commonly that women named it. But I guess I've known both male and females who've named their cars.
I
know,
think
it
you
seems
said
like it's
small sample,
It is a very small sample.
and it's probably a specialized sample.
And it's an old sample dating back like 40 years. So
like your computers, Barry.
exactly. But we do name our computers.
I don't.
I
Well,
don't.
if they have a name on the internet or on your local network, then they do have a name.
Well, see, I think you name things in your life, computers, cars, whatever, because you like to refer to them in song parodies. So you got to, name them to actually be able to reference them quickly, right? Anyway, that's my check-in. I bought myself a toy. I took Thursday off. That was kind of a fun trip.
Cool.
All right, I'll keep mine to the check-in part. So I've been watching what a great example of storytelling at its best, as far as I'm concerned, and it's Colin Black and White. And I wanted to say that I really think that the Black entertainment community is getting this right. They are funding these projects that are informative and creative and inspiring, and we should be following suit. So I'll just say that it prompted me to take some time before this call and sit down and start writing. So to me, that's enough proof for me. And then what I'm writing about, those are all the different strings, and it has to do with, the economy, attention economy, presence economy. What you had to say about the foundation is very interesting to me, because I have a desire to put emotions in a mathematical framework. So it all ties in.
Super.
So how do you spell colon? Is it C-O-L-I-N as in our colon?
As in Colin Kaepernick.
Oh, that's right. I was a supporter of Kaepernick ever since the day he first knelt. And
Me
I
as
was-
well, but
What?
even if you were, me as well, but what I love about this is, even if you weren't, if you were to watch it, your heart might open. And that's what I really like, because it is
Good.
telling his story.
I think NFL is still hypocritical by not welcoming him back into the NFL, even today.
Where can you watch that, Stacey?
Netflix.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
that's my
And I-
next binge.
I normally don't wake up and watch Netflix. Netflix for me is what I watch before I go to sleep. But I actually made my coffee, and instead of turning on the news, I just watched another episode because I love it. I don't want it to end. It's a limited series.
I like Colin Kaepernick. It's just a shame of what happened to him with the NFL.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports fan, and that definitely made me not into a sports fan.
Yep.
So thanks for the recommend.
Yeah, and I just want to say one more thing because it goes to storytelling. Because I'm really trying to move away from like the angry emotion that we see on social media. It's not the way this is written. It's like you're watching a series about a kid growing up. And so there's all different characters and you might relate to different characters, and it's not telling you how to feel, but it is showing you other perspectives. And that's what I think is so great about it. And on a personal note, he didn't have to write the story himself. He had something to tell, but somebody helped him write it. And I'm being personal there.
Well,
How many
I'll
epi-
check in.
Sorry. Before you do, how many episodes is it, Stacy?
I don't know. I'm on 5.
Okay.
Ooh.
Sorry, Stacy. Sorry, Kayla.
Oh, no, it's okay. Is well, I am preparing to make feijoada right now.
Feijoada.
Yes, it's a Brazilian stew with lots of goodness. And it's going to be 2.5 hours to make, and it's probably going to last all week because it's one of my favorite dishes. So if you ever have the need to make something, that's what it is, feijoada.
Sounds like fish water.
No, yeah.
No, feijoada.
It's comfort food goodness. And I'm excited to actually wear a t-shirt today that wasn't given to me by an organization because I'm a dress kind of lady. And shoot, I mean, what's not going on in my life? I got picked up by a florist to do flower crowns and lace. So we'll see how that goes. That's extra income. I just landed another show in a couple of weeks. So that's kind of cool. Hi. Maxwell says hi
Hi.
to everybody.
Maxwell.
He has. I'm full. You're full? Okay, I'll eat the rest of it. Oh, you guys heard that? He's been home with a mysterious illness. We got to get him home tested. He's had a low-grade fever and a pretty sore throat. It was a little concerning yesterday because he said he can't really yell too loudly. So I kept him home because of that. And now I'm okay. Yeah, now you're okay. Yeah, so I think I'm going to, in a couple of weeks, if it works out, take the kids to the Navajo Nation. I had wanted to go to Antelope Valley and check it out, but we'll just see if it works out with somebody watching the dog, and you know how far I can drive by myself again. I think I can estimate about 10 hours. So I think it'll be worth it. It's kind of nice. I thought about it, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's close to Thanksgiving. And I kind of want to teach the kids the truth about our holidays. So anyway, that's on my mind. That's it. It's my chicken.
Thanks. Hey, is there anybody else? Or Kayla, you seem to be low. Your microphone sensitivity seems to be low at the moment, for me at least. Everybody else is coming through more loudly.
Is this better? No? Yes?
Not by much.
It's fine.
Fine.
Maybe it's just me.
Oh, yeah, it's just you then.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna clean out my ears then.
Clean the wax out of your ears, Sam.
I don't have any Q-tips right here. I'm gonna have to go get some. By the way, I used to live in New Mexico, Kayla. And there were lots of places you could go to visit Hopi and Navajo Nation communities. If you could even get there, Bandelier, Bandelier is a really cool place to go visit. It's in western New Mexico, and it shows you exactly how they used to live in caves on the side of a mountain. Pretty cool place.
Oh, that looks so cool. Do you know how far it is from California? You think you could drive there?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Ugh,
I'd have to look it up.
I know. I don't mind the long drives. It's just every day I drive. My complete commute on most days is approximately an hour. That's if the kids don't have any activities. And then my additional commute now to Simi Valley, that's where I'm going to be making my lays, is an additional 30 minutes on top of that. So I drive approximately, oh, and then there's that commute to Long Beach, which is about 3 hours total. So yeah, I drive a lot. I can't even do the math this morning.
Isn't that kind of a given if you live in Southern California?
Yeah, I think that's the history of Southern California too. That's why they built freeways. You know, in addition to a lot of the oranges that came, the dogs are about to howl. They built freeways so that everyone can have their own car and drive wherever they want. That's why the transportation here sucks. You know.
You ever
Yeah.
seen the trolley graveyards? The old, there's this huge graveyard with just stacks and stacks of trolleys from around the 1940s. You can find pictures of them on the internet.
Okay, so Stace or anyone else, any more check-ins or ideas to put on the table? Stace, is the idea you wanted to put on the table this documentary series about Colin Kaepernick and that whole issue?
No, actually. No, because I don't want to ruin, like, I think that sometimes when you talk about something, it really ruins the purpose of it, because the whole idea is for everybody to be able to have their own individual interpretation, for me.
Okay, so what was the idea you thought might be good to put on the table?
Well, I have a question, because I keep thinking about, we keep looking at, shifting different models. And I have this hypothesis or theory that we really need to look at two systems together if we're going to make a change, because sometimes when we look to change one thing, we create different problems. So, maybe the smaller system, if you shift one thing, now it works perfectly, but somewhere else, it's going to cause a problem. And so what I'm saying is we need to look at two things together, a minimum of two things together, so that we stop doing this pendulum thing or back and forth. And
Whack-a-mole.
yeah, and for me, I tend to keep going back to the economy and the way we think about the economy and how that plays into other things. So actually, you know what? If I could, I'm gonna not see your facial expressions because I don't know how to do this. I can just read you a paragraph and then, because I stopped as I was writing and I said, any questions? But let's see how to do that. Actually, I probably can't figure out how to do it.
Are you trying to share your screen?
I was trying to, oh wait, I think I could do it now. Actually, okay. I found it, so I'll stick with this. No, I'm not. I'm sorry, I'm being indecisive. I'm going back and I have something completely different. I could just find you. Okay, because it goes into all the problems I'm having now. So there's neuroscience, and maybe Barry will know some of this, that shows that writing in script affects learning differently than writing on a keyboard. And it's hypothesized that it might have something to do with body memory and, other things like that. I personally, and I'm just speculating, but I personally believe that it has a lot to do with, well, the body memory thing is important because it ties into memory, which is attached to emotion and all those things. I can't speak for all women, but I can speak for emotional people or creative people, specifically using myself, that when my arm is moving, something happens to the flow of my thoughts. Now, I remember having a conversation early on here because it was the first time I had ever spoken with technologists, and bringing up the wish that there was something that I could just write in script and it would be transposed to the computer. And everyone was like, we don't need that, or it's not necessary, or it wouldn't sell. And I remember feeling so minimized, realizing that, yes, to people that are creating technology, which might have a different mindset than people like me, it might not be valuable. But I'm curious, and maybe Kayla, well, she's off now, and Kayla and I both like to write letters, and I think there's something in that as well. Kayla, would it help you? I mean, I know you're pretty good with the typewriter, but would it help you at all, or do you find yourself more creative when you're using a pen and paper?
No.
Yeah.
And it's I'm right-handed and I have a crooked finger. You see this?
Yes.
I have a ton of journals that I had when I was a lot younger, and my handwriting was better and it was a lot easier, but I can type 100 words a minute.
Oh, wow.
So when I think of things and I'm in the flow, it just kind of transfers from the top all to my fingers.
Yeah. See, oh, go ahead.
I don't know in what context you actually asked that question. I would not have answered that question that way. I've always been looking, in fact, for decades, I've been looking for a way where I could actually write on a tablet and have it be turned into electronic text. And I used to spend, I spent like $3,000 on a device called the Momenta, M-O-M-E-N-T-A, a precursor based on Windows for pen computing. And that was wasted money. It didn't do the promise. But today there's a product called Remarkable that is a tablet that does a very good job of simulating paper writing. And my son's actually helping to write some software for that in his spare time. Look it
How
up.
much?
RE:(Markable).
How much?
It's about $400 or $500, I think.
And I don't know if Colin remembers, but I believe I had that conversation with Colin a long time ago.
I don't remember that conversation with you.
No, it might have been a private call between us.
Anyway, just wanted to let you know about Remarkable because
Yeah, I wrote it down.
you might like it.
I'm sure I would.
Okay.
My friend Nancy Williams, who was a journalist and taught journalism, adopted a practice called morning pages. She got a book and she got a very carefully selected pen that just felt just absolutely perfect in her hand. And every morning she would go out sort of on the veranda or some nice, quiet, scenic place with her cup of coffee, and she would write just whatever came to mind on about 1 or 2 pages every morning. It was called Morning Pages. And I was there in Taos, New Mexico, when she was doing it one summer. And one of the things about writing by hand, you write much slower than you can keyboard. And when you write slow, you're spending more time on each meme that you're writing down. And I think you tend to think deeper and more profoundly about it than when you're just clacking it out. So yeah, I think the amount of time that you spend and also the amount of muscle action that's involved. When I was in college taking notes in class, I discovered that if I wanted to remember the contents of the lecture, I had to hear it, I had to write it down, I had to read it back, I had to say it aloud and listen to myself saying it. In other words, I had to pass it through every sensory modality that I could translate the same information into. If I process it through all 5 modalities, I could remember it. the fewer modalities I use, the more rapidly it vanished.
Yeah, if I could add to that, because that's sort of where my interest in this comes from. I'm looking at people being able to release emotions. And now I'm talking about the public. I'm not talking about in a business sense. So for example, I've been trying really hard to write on a computer. So I've been writing like a journal type thing, but using the computer to do it. And I find that it's only when I read it back that the emotions come up. I'm very detached from my emotions as I'm writing it. I don't know if that's always a good thing. When I read it back, that's when the tears come up.
Yeah.
What I'm looking to do through my writing is to heal.
Yeah. That's enacting. I mean, if I would read a piece of dialogue script on a page, that's very flat. But if I listen to two actors recite the dialogue script,
Right.
there's much more emotion in the enactment of a dialogue than just reading the raw script.
Yes, the recording has started, Tees. We've been recording from the beginning.
So my thought goes back to what Kayla was saying. I also spent all of my schooling years taking manual notes all the way through college. And I find now that trying to write down these ideas is a mixed experience for me. I find that on a computer, I cannot draw nearly as quickly as I can on paper. And for me, I remember things by seeing diagrams. So even when I'm, hearing people speak, ideally, if I had my pad with me, I'd be drawing out things that you say, what Barry says, connecting them, what Kayla says, connecting that, whatever. I would love to have some kind of software that allowed me to do it as quickly as I could do on paper. Because I know that once I have it on a computer, I can take your bubble and move it to create more space around it if I want to connect more things to it. On paper, I can't do that. However, if I'm just thinking and releasing stream of consciousness, it's much faster for me on a keyboard. I'm not sure I'm 100 words a minute, but I'm at least 60 or 70, maybe even 80. Okay. Because back when I was in 8th grade, I was already doing 40 or 50. So if I'm really trying to convey a set of ideas, I think putting it down electronically and then being able to go back and reorganizing it. That's what I would do. Is I would then draw a diagram afterwards and then take this snippet from my stream of consciousness text and put it here. Take another one, put it there, and then start connecting them. That's what I used to do with the brain. That's what I do with Axon, the diagramming tool that I use. So it depends on for what purpose. If you're doing it to heal, yeah, I can definitely see how the handwriting gets that across much better. If you're writing it to really soak into each meme, like Barry's talking about, I can see that also. For me, it's more about making connections, and it's more about capturing things and getting them out of my brain, because I know if it's in here, eventually it's going to get lost. So that's why for me, a lot of writing is just making sure it gets out of my brain. Over.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, when I say, doing it to heal, I'm doing it as an example, but I'm more interested in the public healing or school children healing as they live. It's not, I'm just serving as an example to see how it works.
There's also a memory technique that you may have heard of. If somebody gives you a list of words to memorize, the optimal way to do it is to use the words to make a story. So if you can construct a story thread that uses all the words, then you can remember them much better, much longer than if you simply try to memorize a list. And there's an art to learning to string words together to make a story thread.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, all the anger on Facebook, and I think how things might be very different if people had to write all their comments by hand and actually express that anger as opposed to vomiting it out onto the internet.
I would have to agree. When I wasn't writing, I used to get like my notebook with me and I would go hiking. And when I wasn't typing on the computer, my thoughts would just come. And sure, they were a lot slower, but I retained them a lot more. So in retaining them a lot more, they were more in my conscious stream. And so when they came out, I didn't have to do too many edits. Like for instance, now when I write, I'm constantly looking back. Like when I'm writing to you, I look back at what I wrote and I make sure that there are no mistakes, grammatical errors. Whereas when you're actually writing it, you're conscious of your grammatical errors and your little mistakes. So you catch it before it even, hits the piece of paper. At least that's how I work. And I think if people were a lot more conscious instead of, like you said, vomiting it out, a lot slower with their thoughts and maybe took a second, then, it would benefit them. But there's also the flip side. Like, for instance, when I'm angry, sometimes words just come out of my mouth. And thankfully, I don't have that problem where it's hurtful words or words that suck and make you feel awful. When I'm angry, I'm really expressing something, and it just comes out. I'm really expressing something that is deep from the bottom of my heart. And thank the Lord that I don't have that mean spirit in me where, like, I just say some bullshit, F you, crappy stuff. So there's that side too. Sometimes when you're thinking in the moment, and you're writing in social media, sometimes it's almost like, well, it's meant to be said. Whereas some people just, center their life around like throwing up on their page and pointing the finger at each other. Anyway, I'm complete.
And I just,
remember
one sentence, I just want to point out this theme of slowing down. That's it.
many years ago when I was at Bell Labs, there was a group that used to watch kind of old funky movies. We watched a movie featuring a character named Antoine Douanel, young French young man. And there's this one scene that's the only scene. In the morning, he's standing in the bathroom in front of the bathroom mirror, and he's looking at himself and he's reciting his own name, Antoine Douanel, Antoine Douanel, Antoine Douanel, Antoine Douanel. He's practicing saying his name with different inflections for about a minute. The scene lasts, and it's all about him learning how to say his own name with various inflections in it. It was quite a remarkable and memorable scene.
And what's the takeaway from that?
Just that the way you say something, slight nuances in the way you say it, conveys very different meaning.
Yeah.
And so speaking aloud conveys a lot more information than simply looking at something, say, written or typed on a piece of paper. And in people who are in the theater arts point out that they can say things, and when different actors play the same character, they say those same lines very differently. And they have very different meanings depending on how the actor is reciting the lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Stacey, the theme is slowing down?
Not necessarily, well, no, I didn't mean that. It's something that's been brought up a number of times as maybe being a negative, but I'm seeing it as a positive.
Pondering.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Pondering is a very powerful technique. Meditating and pondering are very similar.
Sam.
Sam has his hand up.
I can see how it comes across as slowing down. For me, there's another mechanism at work, and that's a filter. Some people will issue words with no filter when they're speaking, or will act with no filter when they're behaving. To me, there's a step, I forget who exactly said this, between your thoughts and your action is choice. When you can actually choose in that moment, then you're not just reactionary. Then you're not just reactive. Then you're not just on automatic. You're actually choosing And I think it's that filter, that step, the actual choice that I think I would like to lean into. Not so much that it's a time lapse, but it's a fact that you're creating for yourself choice. That you can say, of all the things that I could do or say or act out, I'm going to choose this. And if there is no such time, then it's probably evident you're not creating that choice for yourself. And then you're more likely to be on automatic. So for me, whether or not it's writing on script or whether or not it's, on paper or in front of a camera or on stage or whatever, it's whether or not you're creating these choices for yourself. That to me is more important. So just being in the habit of saying, I could react this way, but I'm going to choose that way is very powerful. So that's where I'd like to take this notion as opposed to a slowing down. It's an awareness and it's an exercise of choice for me. Over.
Yeah, thanks. I think that liminal space is where you have the opportunities to sonder and also to decide whether you're making any headway with the conversation. You can explore the meta of the conversation. And I think that's also where humor gets built in that moment. If you're prepared and you already have a lecture or a speech, then that's a different kind of conversation than being in the moment trying to react. And I think that the point between having an idea and acting upon it, especially in a conversation with somebody else, is where you can actually sonder and try to empathize and then decide, is humor appropriate? Is silence appropriate? Do I take this personally, or does that person just really having a bad day? And, you just never know. Unless you don't know, right? So, anyway. Sonder, that's a good word.
I think you meant saunter as in walk slowly, not sonder.
No, Sonder.
You meant
The
sonder.
Canadian version of Sonder, yes.
Is it Sonder?
Sonder is, I think, a different word, which I forget exactly.
Yes, Sonder, yeah, that's the word.
I'm gonna look it up because I forgot what it meant. It's like sunder. It's like to split apart or something.
Sonder, Urban Dictionary, realization that everybody around you, even strangers, are living a life just as complex as yours.
Compared to saunter, the Thoreau sauntering society, to walk slowly and take everything.
I think you saunter when you sonder, for sure.
They could be related. I think they're different words, though.
Slowly moving fast.
Kayla.
So this is kind of in the theme of just slowing down. Yeah, it's definitely really important. I just thought about my hike this morning. So this morning I hiked at 6:30 and it was still relatively dark. Right now it's overcast and there was a little bit of fog. So it was completely dark when I went hiking. And before I got a little scared, I thought, I'm going to embrace this moment. I'm not going to have my headphones on. There's nobody on the trail. It was more of a safety thing turned into a meditation thing. And I had the light on my phone. I've got the dog with me, and I'm walking through very dark path that I'm used to. And it was a really cool perspective of the things that I missed and the things that I miss on a weekly basis, because I do this hike on a weekly basis. And that is all of the sounds around me. That's an awareness. That's the birds that I don't hear when they start waking up. It's the rustling of the leaves. It's, the air. It's the people who are crazy enough to hike that early alongside me. And I think when people, what people forget is when they don't slow down, when they don't kind of go into that, I call it tepo, that spiritual moment of just being aware of meditating. You know, it just kind of becomes like an illness without even knowing it. Like you start to really detach from things that are permanent, like nature. And I think, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I think, you know, that's kind of the down humanity. And oh yeah, that's why I'm saying it. Barry, at 8:09, you wrote, "Why America Collapsed is only just the beginning." And for whatever reason, I am tying this theme, and I'm sorry if I'm calling it a theme, Stacey, that you brought up to what Barry had put in the very beginning. Anyways, my rambling is over. Thanks.
Yeah, if you saunter, you're unlikely to rush pell-mell over the edge of the cliff. And I think that the problem is in our rushed modern culture. We just, you know, rush pell-mell into disaster because we don't look far. We don't take stock of where we are and where we're going. You know, we have a very short visual horizon, very short time horizon.
You know, Barry, I think some of the early conflict we had was, I think, you possibly thinking I didn't have the ability to saunter.
I didn't know what your abilities were.
Yeah, but you know, because I come up with the idea of having bias transparent in conversations, and that relates to individuals in the conversation. But who gets to judge what those biases are, I think, was the contention point. And yeah, through the act of sauntering, you can set the sliders.
Yeah, take it easy, go slow.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you're going to go in and start labeling somebody and say, you know, that's more the commercialized version of it, isn't it? Because that's what they do with celebrities. They paint them up to what you want them to be, not what they are.
Well, circus acts run very fast. I bailed early last week because we went sauntering in the woods near Walden Pond. And because we were on a trail, which is, you know, kind of uneven and tree roots and everything, you had to keep an eye on the ground so you wouldn't step, you know, in the wrong place. So if you want to look at the scenery, you had to stop walking, kind of look around and take in the scenery and then walk a few more steps. If you kept walking, you couldn't take in the scenery because you had to keep watching, you know, your footing. So we had to say, you know, we had to slow down and saunter. The Thoreau Sauntering Society. If you go to Walden Pond, there's a little shop where you can buy, you know, memorabilia, and the biggest seller is t-shirts and sweatshirts that say Thoreau Sauntering Society on them. Sam.
So if I go back to this slowing down or this choice, this awareness, to me, that's where imagination takes place. Imagination is creating choices for yourself. It's part of imagination, but it's definitely imagination. It's creativity. It's creating those choices, those possible worlds, those possible futures that those choices then enable and take you to. And if one expands that idea to look at the impact of those choices, then the word that comes to mind for me is power. Because in that moment between thinking and acting, if you make a conscious choice and you make impactful choices, that's where power comes from.
I call that potential.
Power over.
If it's exercised, it can be powerful.
I'm talking about choosing the actual option you give yourself.
That might be
You
wisdom.
react, you're just adding to the chaos. If you choose a path forward that's more aware, that's more intentional, that's more constructive, that's more future visioning, that's more aligned with values, then your impacts will be more as you would like to intend. That to me is power. Well,
Positive potential. I don't want to quibble terms, but when you say in that spot in between where creativity lives, in between the thought and the action, there's also that would be an individual view of it, but then you could have all those Lego pieces with other creative Lego pieces. And then that's the collective creativity. So I'm just wondering how many types of creativity, if with the individual, is it anywhere else? Is it all in that that qualia space? Or, is that where creativity is? It's a thought only, I guess, or is it influenced outside that space as well?
I
I
don't
think it can
understand.
only be there. Well, when you're thinking, you're having creative moments, but can you have creativity outside of like natural creativity where I think some people, when they're in the flow, it's like they almost feel a bit of disembodiment, like when they're in the act of real time excellence, be it whatever sport they're in, they have this, I don't know, this kind of this creative moment where it just encompasses them. I don't know. I guess that's when you really have your game down and you can respond like, some of these extreme sports like surfing or, some of these things where you have to react in the moment. Like I think a lot of it's like hang gliding and all that kind of stuff where you're really got to be on your game. Time kind of suspends itself. I guess they talk about time actually being shifted as well. So I'm just interested in that slow down spot. And one, can it be collectively shared? And two, does it exist outside of there? Like, is it all just in the space between the thought and the action?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, because you said it's power and I say it's
Yes.
potential.
It is.
Power is outside.
To me, power is the impact of potential. Potential is nothing if it doesn't become realized, right? And
That's right.
in continuous acts, the mind, the brain is always still engaged, right? If someone's actually running, down the field in a soccer game with the ball and aware of all your players and the opponents and the conditions, etc., the brain, the mind is still very much a part of that. I don't think it's purely just a body memory. Okay, so I don't understand myself how you create without any aspect of mental or brain activity. I don't understand.
Yeah, no, I guess I am trying to break that mind body boundary in some way, but I think it's just to highlight the fact that you're talking about the space in between having a thought, taking a moment of however long you need, and then responding.
Yes.
There's a lot that lives in there.
Yes. And that's always happening, or hopefully, ideally, always happening. It doesn't mean that you have to sit still for, n seconds before you act, because you're constantly, living multiple different systems in parallel. So your brain
In fact,
is
sometimes, sometimes things have to be a little bit out of, like, I've heard the analogy that if somebody changed the doorknob a half an inch on your front door, and you've always gone and reached the doorknob, and then you would notice that they changed it, but you would never notice the doorknob. You just go through. If they didn't change it, you would, be thinking about the dogs on the other side of the door or whatever. You'd never notice the doorknob. So yeah, it's this, we do have a lot of assumption built up and bias for sure. Is this my house? Is this my door? It's like, maybe you wouldn't even notice, but you'd notice something was weird. So yeah, kind of derailing from the idea, but the power that you're speaking of, I think is something that you do with the potential idea. Like you have to patent an actual implementation. You can't just patent an idea, I don't think, right?
Why are we talking about patents?
Well, the patent would be the powerful thing. It could do something. The idea, until it's actually executed in the patent, isn't a thing.
But
So
why
it's
are
potential.
we talking about patents?
Because a patent is a thing, and the idea of writing the patent is potential.
Right, but why are we talking about patents?
I think I'm equivocating. I'm just nitpicking your idea of potential versus power.
Which I think is orthogonal to what I was trying to say.
Okay, we'll continue on then, Sam. I don't want to derail you.
Well, we'll
think
just
your point-
ponder that for a
Yeah, go
while.
ahead. Go ahead.
If there's something profound, it will emerge, as long as you ponder it.
Mm. Well, I really like the idea where he's saying that's where creativity lives. And I was saying that's where humor lives, and or can be, and it's almost like, is that where everything lives?
I think
Like
a lot
before
of
it's a thing?
imagination emerges out of dreamscapes. There's a lot of stories about people who trying to solve a problem and they have a dream in which some idea comes to mind in the middle of a dream.
I guess everything you notice is what I'm trying to say. You're conscious. Like you're bringing stuff that would be subconscious into your conscious by slowing down. That's what I'm trying to say.
Can I connect this to something that I thought Stacy posted or something I might have also referenced earlier this week? Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you posted a meme earlier this week regarding the theme, it costs nothing to be a decent human being. You guys recognize that meme?
I commented on it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't post it. I believe Ken Homer posted it and Neil Davidson and myself commented on it.
Okay. See, I've seen this a lot. I've seen this hundreds of times on Facebook. And every time I see it, I think, okay, it's conveying a nice message, but is it really true? To me, I'm wondering whether or not it's worth talking about. Because, attaining a perspective where one could actually see the value of that isn't automatic. It's not free. And it's in that notion that I think it's actually quite expensive. You have to pay a life to be able to have that perspective. And a life is not free. Anyway, I just thought I'd connect those together, because in choosing to be a decent human being, in whatever way we each think of being decent means, that's a whole lifetime's understanding. That lifetime has come with a lot of experiences, pains. One could call them costs. Anyway, I was just reflecting on that. I still don't know exactly where I land on it, but it just doesn't seem so transparently true as it seems to be presented on Facebook.
It strikes me as you're saying there are no free lunches. Everything costs.
So Sam, that's a big underlying theme for me, because in these spaces, we spend a lot of time, because everybody's basically in business, I'm the outlier to that, looking at things from the perspective of a larger organization. And there's not enough focus looking at the perspective from the individual, like individuality is considered bad, but that's only half the story. The other half is we need to feed the individual. So in general, as a society, we are not really good at on this hand and on this hand, like Tevye did in Fiddler on the Roof. We need to do more of that. But right now it comes off as yeah, but, or combative, or we're not valuing what somebody said, instead of saying, yes, and it also does this, and it also does this. That's why, so Sam and I had a conversation. I was asking, what was that document that showed the different?
The concept of operations, the operations
Yes.
document.
And that's why I had suggested it would be interesting to take on those different roles, because we do need practice seeing things from all the different points of views and perspectives.
Yeah. Can I fill in that gap for those people who may not understand this document?
Absolutely. Help me out.
Okay, so way back a long time ago when we were starting these GCC conversations, I brought up this issue called the operations concept document. Now, when I first got out of college, I entered a systems engineering group at TRW. It's one of the biggest aerospace companies at the time. And it had this discipline called systems engineering. And one of the coolest aspects of systems engineering was, imagine, if you would, some time in the future where the system that you're conceiving of building already exists. Now imagine all the affected stakeholders, whether you run it, whether you're a victim of it, whether you're just a user of it, whether you're the boss of it, whether you're an investor of it, whether you're just a neighbor of it, whether you're a child encountering it. Imagine each of those stakeholders and what a day in the life of that stakeholder would look like if the system were built. Now,
Right.
the systems I was working on, one was a space shuttle simulation system, of which there's like 11 simulators, okay? And each of them has different purpose. Like one of them is to, train the arm. Another one is to train life support. Another one is to train flight, whatever. And each of these simulators had to be high fidelity in that particular function, but the rest of it had to be low fidelity, okay? And you can get by with that. Another system I was working on was the Hubble Space Telescope. And we had to think of gigabytes coming down, per second from this place. We had to think about storage. We had to think about telemetry. We had to think about transmission. We had to think about orbits, all of this sort of thing. But you can apply this to any system you're thinking about building, including the future, okay? So what would a day in the life in the future of Stacy look like, or of Sam, or of Kayla, or Barry, or Josh, or whomever, okay? And then just write that out. To me, that's the most fun aspect of systems engineering. You get to write these science fiction stories of what a day in the life is. And it's even better if you first write what the day in the life of that person is today without that system. So today I have to spend, 20 minutes, writing down by hand and then transcribing it into a paper diagram and drawing circles and drawing the diagrams and connections. And then I have to render it in some diagramming tool like Axon or MindMaster or something else. And then I have to share it someplace with a link. And then I have to give people permission to see it. Then I have to worry about whether or not it's backed up, blah, 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 blah. As opposed to, okay, now with this next DDKR2, boom, I think, and it just appears in thin air. And I've got a 3D volumetric display, and everybody can see it, at the same time I see it. They can rotate it, they can size it, they can do. So, those science fiction stories are the coolest aspect of this thing I call, or has been called, systems engineering. So we decided to go into an experiment where those of us in GCC at the time said, let's write one of these operations concept documents. An operations concept document is a collection of these science fiction stories. Here's how it looks from this perspective. Here's how it looks from that perspective. Here's how it looks from this person's perspective, blah, blah, blah. And so this was something, and those little stories are written up as little vignettes. And so there's an operations concept document that we wrote for GCC that has about 4 or 5 of these little vignettes. It didn't gather momentum, but at least we started that notion. And it's a way of co-creating. It's a way of saying, what would we want a life of this person to look like? What would we like Stacy's life to look like? Stacy, what would you like your life to look like if we had this thing that we're calling Global Challenges Collaboration? If it did its purpose, if it actually came up with global governance rules, what would a day in the life of a Kenyan look like? A day in the life of somebody in Cambodia, day in the life of somebody in the Navajo Nation, day in the life of somebody in Canada, okay? What would that look like? So that to me was why this operations concept document was the coolest thing in systems engineering, and is a chance to co-create. So I really like that notion of systems engineering, and I'm glad you brought it back up, Stacey.
Thank you. If I could just share another way to co-create that I would like, I'm going to just share my screen because I like the idea of taking something that's there and together just looking to see one thing we might change. And so this is what I thought it was going to be on here. Okay. Let me see. How do I make this bigger? I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. So I guess I got to take you off my screen. I thought I had it all set up, but you can see it. Okay. So for me, and I think a lot of us, I like the idea of the presence economy. It goes one step further from the attention economy, but I still see something that's missing. And, that's something that I would like to talk about. I think creates value through relationships is a great thing and optimizes for serendipity. All these things are great. The incentivizers organizers, though, it's great, but it leaves out somebody. It leaves out the participants. And that's what I mean when I say we're only looking from a business point of view. So I'll stop there.
Is that yours or is that something you saw from someplace else?
That was a Medium article. I started writing an article because, like I said, I keep using the words the attention economy, and Jerry had pointed out that there's a whole different theory. And, you know, I realized that his negative feeling towards it was because it's really been used to extract from. So I wanted to sit down and write about, so he mentioned the word presence, and that struck me. So I wanted to write about that. And I said, I better sit down and find out what's already been written. So I looked at the chart and I see and if you look at the chart, it's in the, it's there. But both those theories say an attention economy creates people who, a presence economy creates people too. And the first thing that I thought is, why is somebody creating people? People should be creating the economy. So that's what I want to write about, because I want to bring in that perspective, because I think it's missing. Go ahead, Sam.
I'm finding it curious why you use the word economy. I've never understood that. And if I were, go ahead.
If you're finding it curious, then I'll answer. Okay. I think if I use the term economy, it will appeal to people that are not the normal people that I talk to that talk about emotions and are heart-centered. So I think the terms, the words will appeal to a bigger audience, and it'll be easier for people that don't think like me to see a flow of value.
Actually, that reminds me, Barry uses the word economy, I think, in his model, the different what is that, the 7 stages that people go through, or
I can display it if you want to see it. I have a chart called multiple interlinked economies. Let's see if I can.
that's the one.
I'd
Here it
like to
is.
see that.
I'll just share it for you. Can you see?
Mm-hmm.
This is a section of that long article of mine called multiple interlinked economies. And there's the chart that goes with it. So I had, I think, 8 economies. I started with the material economy because that's the one that everybody learns about. You take the course in economics, you'll learn about the flow of goods and services in exchange for little pieces of green paper. And then the attention economy actually comes from Jerry Mikulski's, one of his workshops. Somebody pointed out that attention is a very scarce resource, and that creates an economy. And so I defined the information and attention economies as the next one after the material economy. And then after that, the entertainment and drama economies, and then the emotions and learning economy, which is where I did a lot of my research, and finally the spiritual economy. And I'm just going to end the share a second. So, because the point is, let me move my window back to where I can see it. So these economies are interlinked a little bit like the ends of a slinky. So any activity in one of the economies induces fluctuations and flows in the neighboring ones. And so the slinky is sort of your visual model of the material economy on one end and the spiritual economy on the other, and all the ones in between. So flows and fluctuations in one economy induce fluctuations and flows in the neighboring ones up and down the line. And by the way, I stole this idea from James Clerk Maxwell, because Maxwell had electrostatic forces and magnetic forces. He just had 2 of them. And so changes in the electric field create changes in the magnetic field and vice versa. I said, okay, I can just take that basic idea of James Clerk Maxwell and just string a whole string of economies together where they all interact with each other up and down the line.
You just jumped the IQ line there, Barry, with the, the Maxwell. That's okay, though.
Actually, that's where you and I started, because I assumed incorrectly that you knew about Maxwell's equations from EE, but evidently it wasn't in your curriculum.
No, that's actually the opposite. I did know about them. The way you were explaining them in a field as an analogy was what we were going to. So But do you think it's possible? Oh, Sam's got his hand up, I see. Go ahead, Sam.
So my quibble, and this could be just me, is with the word economy. Because I just verified again, it's about management of resources, about being thrifty, about exchange of values. So if you look at definitions of the word economy, that's what comes up. And even if we were to use the word, rather than attention, rather than material, rather than even presence, okay, could I suggest the one that I like to use, which is connection? Can we think about connection economies?
Yeah. I mean, I just define it as the flow of some commodity within a system. That's just
Yeah.
what
Value. It's a values that rub off on values on other parts of your life.
something flowing, some commodity flowing.
Yeah.
So whether it's goods and services and pieces of green paper, or ideas and information, or emotions, or drama, or whatever, something's flowing back and forth between
And
two or more parties.
I also associate emotions and spirituality as kind of the same thing. That's another thing. I don't know how
Yeah.
you split those out.
Well, awe and wonder are two examples of emotions which are on the spiritual end, whereas anger and I don't know, humor maybe on the more banal end.
It is an interesting way to split up the systems, though. I like it.
Stacy's the other hand.
Yeah, so, yeah, thank you for that chart, Barry, because that even like solidifies it more for me, because what I want to do is weave those all in together. And so, to answer to why the word economy, that flow of value is important, because that's value is part of an equation, a mathematical equation.
Right.
At least that's how I'm looking at it.
And the mathematics I stole from James Clerk Maxwell.
Well, I don't know about those mathematics, but I know that I have some ideas as far as effort, time, patience, consideration, things like that.
Right.
Sam?
Mathematics of connection. Yes.
Yeah. To me, this whole notion of value is troublesome for me also, because the way it's practiced in economies is static. I'd much rather see a more dynamic, permanent, persistent notion of value. Like today, how do I value my relationship with, let's say, Barry? Okay. And Saturdays, I'm very engaged with Barry. On Wednesdays, I don't hardly think about Barry at all, unfortunately. Okay. So if you were to ascribe a value, I'm just using one example. Okay. If I take my bucket of honey that I just paid $40 for, which is a good price, by the way, it's sitting in my pantry. Okay. What is its value to me today? As opposed to when I finally open it up and start actually consuming some of it. See, I think this notion of value being at a particular point in time is artificial. To me, I'd rather see us move beyond that. So if I have a connection with a beekeeper, and I know that I really, can get honey whenever I run out, then that's a relationship that I know how to value. It's actually something I can factor into my life, into my survival plan, whatever, okay? If I know where to go get paper, if I know where to get water, food, these are connections. I have a connection with Costco. Unfortunately, it's around a number of transactions, but I can think of that as a persistent connection. I have a persistent connection with Stacy. I have a persistent connection, believe it or not, with Tammy, even though I haven't spoken to her in 2 years, okay? So I'm wondering, I really, really prefer to flip this whole transaction model around and eliminate transactions and think about flows in connection. Because whatever flows has a value that is dynamic. One time, if I just ran a marathon, that cup of water is going to be worth $5 to me. Whereas today, I'd only pay 79 cents for an entire plastic jug. Not mentioning that, I'd rather not pay for a plastic jug. Okay. So it has dynamic difference in value, and our economy is only set up to recognize point in time value. It's not persistent value. And I think that is extremely arbitrary, extremely fragile, extremely unfair. And you get these scales of economy that allow billionaires to hoard assets. If I had a connection with Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, you know, if I need cat litter, I know how to get it. There's some value there, okay? But it's a way that allows Jeff to be, you know, rewarded, you know, live well, but not to hoard 99% of society's resources so that they can't benefit the rest of society. I think this transactional basis, which gives rise to purchasing, which gives rise to capitalism, which gives rise to this entire system of sustaining capitalism, is what's made our society sick. And I don't like these static point in time notions of value. That's my main point. I'd much rather think in terms of connection. Over.
Yeah, so like we said earlier on the call, like there's different ways of saying things. There's also different ways of using words. So when I'm using the word value, I'm looking at like value in an algebraic equation, which actually ties into what you're saying, because, well, first of all, I want to say that if we want to go from one thing to another, I feel like we need to build a bridge. We can't just say we want that. And so putting things in terms of an economy for me is bridging a gap from where we are to where you want to be. But secondly, when you're talking about attention and emotions and bringing in the things that I hope to bring in, what that does is it allows for the value to not be stagnant, because there's an equation that goes into the value in the first place. Does that make any sense, Sam?
It does. In fact, you know, obviously these prices are computed algebraically in some form, obviously. But I think what I'm insisting on is the presence of a T term. There is no T term today. Okay, T
What does that
meaning
mean?
time.
I'm sorry.
T
T term,
meaning
what do you mean? Say it again.
T meaning time.
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 Yes.
Well,
Okay? It's a
interesting.
timestamp today, but it's not a dynamic notion with a delta T.
Right. This is where when you say algebraic equations, in a sense it's algebraic, but the terms in the algebraic equation are time derivatives. So they're really built out of the calculus. Algebra is just a way to relate the terms, but the terms themselves vary in time. They're sinusoidal or they're flowing in some way. And so you have to go beyond algebra to calculus to get the time varying component that's related. And most people, you know, even people who take calculus sort of never really pick up the concept of what is a time derivative. But it's in there. I mean, when I do the slinky, I can do the slinky very slow and deliberatively, or I could do it, you know, very chaotically. And so the rate at which things are happening, if I slow them down in slow motion, you can sort of see things. If I do it too fast, you sort of miss the details because you can't capture the rate at which things are changing in time. They
Also
change-
becomes turbulent.
Yeah, turbulent, exactly.
Yeah.
Time of, so again, there's no way I'm ever going to learn calculus, but what I can describe is how time can affect patience,
Yeah.
how relationship can affect patience, how effort can relate to all those things. So it's about relationships of those things. I might have a lot of patience for someone that I really like. I might have less patience for someone I don't like. I might have more patience if I'm involved in an activity that requires less effort. I mean, those things are related. Those are the things that I want to bring in. And I think that using the language of economy and being able to use attention and value will help me to do that. It's something that I need. That's what I found, what I think will be best. I don't know, let's say.
When
Haven't done it
Calvin
yet.
and Hobbes are careening down the hill on their sled at very high speed, they're out of control because things are happening so fast that they can't control the sled. But if you go down a gentle hill slowly, you can learn to steer the sled as long as you're going slow enough. So control has to do with how fast things are changing with respect to how fast you can react to the things that are changing. So speed and acceleration, change of direction. Those are things that if you slow them down, you can learn to regulate them, to manage them. Car
And
goes
that's
too
where the
fast, you're out of control.
That's where the emotions come in. How
Exactly.
panicked you are is going to affect how well you think. It all
Bingo.
ties in.
Give me time to think this through. No, the bullet's coming at you right now.
Colin's got his hand up.
Yes. Patience is a type of temperament, I guess, which I think unlocks the ability to actually interpret that space between the idea and the action. So patience, if you don't have patience, you don't slow down. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And I think that's a temperament, which is, I think, a behavior, is it not? Is behavior temperament, or is it the other way around? Your temperament decides your behavior, maybe. So yeah, it's interweaved. So it's dynamic. And
As
like
opposed to
Barry says,
this.
yeah, and the idea with the economies, like, let me just read you the last of chapter 9 in Sapiens. How did money succeed where gods and kings failed? And the idea of what was succeeded was the ability to become universal. So, and that creates the economy. And I think that's in the sense that Barry's using the word, not in how do we manage it, but that it is, and it transfers value, and it's ubiquitous. So a system word, economy, may be, so a better word might be able to be found, but I think it's in that sense of and the first money was created. It was barley money, Sumerian. It appeared somewhere around 3000 BC at the same time and place under the same circumstances in which writing appeared. And writing is the thing that allowed us to, get into that space in between our ideas and our actions and share them, and share the potential for great power of collective intelligence and things. Printing presses and keeping track of the value, or who owes who. And it's kind of funny when they're talking about the different combinations and permutations that would be necessary in order to have a bartering economy where you know how many apples it is for a sheep. But what if you already had enough honey, for example, and you didn't need any honey? Then Sam would have to have 2 buckets of honey and find someone to take his honey in order to get something else. It just becomes a nightmare. So that money is really the grease, and it was more powerful than kings and God to circle the earth. So that's the system we're talking about.
Yeah. So please don't misunderstand me. I am not against currency. I'm not against symbolic representations of value. I think, though, that we need to move from a kindergarten understanding of value to at least a first or second grade notion of value. See, I think a piece of paper representing value was actually a fascinating invention. But if we just stop there, we still allow inequities to be practiced using this new invention.
Yeah.
I mean, is it not unfair that there's an almost arbitrary arbitrage exchange rate setting between currencies here versus currencies in Africa, or currencies in China, or in Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
This is part of how we persist oppression.
But that's not the tool. That's the usage. That's the usage of the tool.
That's right.
Right?
It's the usage of the tool that is unfair. The tool itself, if you think of it as, just statically defined, and you let the system, quote unquote, manage the arbitrage, it still gets abused by those in power. So we need to evolve beyond simple currency, simple transactions. That's the evolution I'm talking about. I'm not saying get rid of money entirely. I'm saying evolve beyond it.
Money became money for the sake of money, and it's unbalanced power structure that shouldn't have been. Basically, is that what you're saying? It's unbalanced.
Well, the system allowed money to be accumulated with no added value to society. Exchange rates is one example of that. Futures, derivatives is another example of that. almost no value whatsoever. What is this thing called risk? You know, let's spread risk around, okay? But let's do it in a manageable way that's fair for society. And it's just not just a way for hidden usury. Insurance companies are the richest companies on the planet, next to banks, okay? And why? It's because they feed on fear. Why do people feed on fear? It's because they don't have security. Why do they not have security? It's because we don't have connections with each other. It's a big inter-networked system of fears, leverages, arbitrary transaction and exchange rate settings that just persists what's going on.
Still, though, the idea that money is a base tool, I think is the point, is one point. And I think you're adding another point on top of it, which is a different discussion.
I'm trying to
Worthy
evolve
of
us
having.
beyond money, yes.
Yeah. So that's a second discussion, because we're talking actually about how economy was a metaphor for Barry to explain the different categories of human interaction that is valued as far as the economies, I guess. It kind of makes sense. So I can understand you're triggered by economy. So there should be maybe a way looking forward. I don't know if it'd be useful, Barry, if you had a way to distinguish it from the actual economy and how people spend money. That's not what you're talking about, even though that's kind of obvious. It would probably trigger people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I went into some detail in the entertainment and drama economy, and Stacy even wrote up her own summary of the drama economy. So what are you exchanging in a stage scene, a drama? You're exchanging, emotions and information. And so there's a lot of emotions in flow, as well as information and misinformation. And you get what comes out of it, a drama. That's an economy. And in fact, there's a mathematical model that a good drama adheres to. If you have one character do all the talking, the other one just sits there, eyes glazed over, you don't have a drama. You have a monologue soliloquy and nothing interesting for the audience to watch.
And the engineering exercise Sam talked about, I think, is one exercise that's designed to be in that space of consideration. The day in the life of, right? You stay right in there, in that place of Sonder, right? And then, when you're writing a novel, it's probably completely in an experience of sondering through what could be as you wander and sonder and the sonder. A lot of words, but yeah, it's really interesting. This idea of Glenn brings it up a lot. I think he really lives in this area of how could it be better. And so I think that's a meme in the group. So for Sam jumping on economy, it makes sense because it's a global challenge, right? So, yeah.
We haven't heard from Josh today. Don't know if Josh is listening.
Well, I'm listening. I'm here.
Any reactions to share?
I'm just listening, just enjoying listening. Economically, I will keep my words to a minimum. Economically.
See, the attention economy, he's paying attention. And a lot of people, value having people pay attention to them. Attention is a scarce resource.
So Josh, can I ask you a question? How does it feel to listen here versus listening in Clubhouse, which I know you spend some time on? Is there like a qualitative difference?
I'm not sure your question. Listen here versus what?
Clubhouse.
Versus listening in Clubhouse.
You can't compare the two. That's like, is it like listening to birds versus listening to lizards?
Which are we?
That's my point. It's not the same thing.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so there's one club called What It Sounds Like in New York. And within that club could be multitudes of many, many conversations, but it's completely different here. For one, it's all Black people. Two, it's usually Yeah, it's just different. I don't know. How would you explain, a bunch of Black people from all different boroughs in New York conversation versus our conversation here today?
Different topics, very
Yeah, I'm
different.
wondering
Or
whether the,
and the synchronicity of a random person coming in and flipping it all over and start hitting on one of the people in the room. So that's the caveat, is the randomness of possibilities. I hope that helps to give you some idea of differences.
it does. I haven't yet spent any time on Clubhouse, but this conversation group that started in the archaeology department at Stanford way back in February 2011, gradually over COVID turned to a Zoom conversation. So it's been Zoom for 2 years. And now they're trying to figure out whether we ought to move to Clubhouse. So next conversation on November 6th, we're going to try Clubhouse. So I was just wondering when you made
Sam's gonna fall into Clubhouse.
when you made
I'll tell you.
these changes, did the nature of conversation change? Was it different? I believe in Clubhouse you don't have video, right?
Correct.
So did it lose a lot, when you're able to just focus on voices and not actually watch faces, for example? So we're trying that experiment in serious conversations on Wednesdays.
Interesting.
And the voices are not all that different. I mean, if you're fairly new to a conversation on Clubhouse and you hear people talking, you really have a hard time keeping track of who's who, because you don't have that visual representation of the face to separate people.
It is different.
Sam.
Does it tell you who's
different.
speaking, or does it not tell you?
Yeah, it balloons their little avatar image,
It highlights it.
pulses it.
Okay. Yeah.
But that means you can't just be listening. You actually have to be looking, at your smartphone to see whose avatar is pulsing, to know the name of who's speaking.
I think to answer Sam's question somewhat, it depends on the people in the room and the culture that's assumed at play. Even though we don't have guidelines here, I think there is a certain culture at play. I don't know if you guys can feel it. It's a very respectful one. Whereas you go to some of these other places, it's more like, the town square on the corner, where people are trying to, bust each other's balls, as it were. A lot of that happens in these discussion forums. So it depends who's there, if they want to bust your balls or not, right? We do it differently, I guess. A lot of those conversations, but the face versus the voice thing is very interesting. And you kind of assign a face to a voice after a while, even though it's a fuzzy one. And then when you actually get to see the face, it can be a bit of a shock. So there you go.
I'm laughing. It just reminds me of like dating, when you meet somebody over the phone first and you only used to get to hear their voice, and then you see them and they look nothing like it.
But on consideration, I'm thinking that not seeing the face is similar to when they decided to interview or audition people for the symphony, but they would do it behind a curtain because they didn't want people to know whether it was a male or a female, because there was a bias towards hiring males. So not seeing somebody's face does have a little bit of that effect of making it a more fair zone. And I think the sondering is very important when you're in these forums, so that you don't get triggered. Like, I've got triggered a few times before, but it's going to be hard to trigger me now, because I've taken some retrospect on what actually is and what isn't involved in the conversations. And I know when I'm having a real conversation or when someone's just trying to josh, and you know what I mean? And, I've had a lot of real conversations with, I think, everybody in this room. So I guess that's a privilege. The attention economy, right? And thank you.
So by the way, I'm getting ready to go have brunch with my older daughter who just turned 27, believe it or not. So I will not be staying beyond the top of the hour. I'll leave this thing open though, by the way.
To go back to the economy, I think the interesting focus is on exchange rates. And that's, Sam, like what you brought up. If we can really look at exchange rates in all different ways, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's crucial to a transaction, right? The price is an exchange rate, a per hour is an exchange rate. And arbitrage of, francs to dollars is an exchange rate. Bitcoin values are exchange rates, and those are not, in a sense, governed by anything sensible. We took ourselves off a gold standard a long time ago.
So now I want to go back to the clubhouse conversation as far as not being able to see somebody and seeing somebody. Because what I realized for me is if I'm not going to be able to see somebody, like in the case of Sam right now, it's helpful for me to close my eyes and do what they're doing. So I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but I'm very clear that that's for me. If I'm looking at you, then I have to look at you. And if you're not there, I need to close off too, to be in that space. So I figured I'd share that.
You don't have to emote unless he's actually looking at the screen.
I mean,
That's why
it's
I turned
not a
off my
conscious
video,
choice.
Stacy.
Say it again.
That's why I turned off my video.
No, I'm saying, as you were speaking, I really wanted to close my eyes.
I remember Jazz Winder. I haven't heard from him quite a while. I wonder about him once in a while because he's one of those guys that was routine, right, at the coffee shop. And I know when I was talking to him, he'd always want you to look right into his eyes, right? He had this eye contact thing that was very important to him. So yeah. Yep. I've for a long time have been in voice only mode, listening to radio because I'm very imaginative. I don't need to see the person's face usually, but it is different.
Yeah.
And I think it is valuable. I think it is valuable to know what the other person looks like. For some reason, it just quiets the mind in a way. I don't know.
And I'm not even suggesting one's better than the other. I'm just saying that I need continuity. If they're doing it one way, I have to do it that way. I don't know if any of you have this experience, but when somebody puts their picture up and they're talking, I find myself looking at their picture. It's just the way I work. Josh.
I was going to say, Stacey, one of the things I just noticed that they added on Clubhouse was the ability to have a link at the top of the conversation, and you can pull it in so it'll have the picture and the caption of where you pulled the link from.
Oh.
And that's definitely changing the conversation because I find it distracting. Like I thought it would be so cool. Oh, great. We don't have to have a group chat to share. It's very distracting to have that thing up there. I didn't think it would be, but I like it and I don't like it depending on the conversation. If we're doing a science type conversation and we're all sharing links, it's helpful. But just to have a social conversation, it's very distracting.
Absolutely.
And yeah, same with faces too. There's the icon you can change. So people realize that if you change it, you can change the flow of the conversation depending on your icon, much like Alex sometimes does with the background. He's changing the different pictures, but the signaling of this, where I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, versus us both turning off our FaceTime, it's completely, I think we all know that that's different when we're on like iPhone calls. If you have an iPhone or whatever you want to call a video call, you turn off the video and it's a different dynamic in the conversation because now you're moving around, and it's, I personally, I like to have conversations with it the video off so I can feel safe and secure, and I'm not having to look where I am. I can just pick my nose and just, hi. So like, you're not seeing all of that because that's disgusting. No one wants to see that. So I think it's great having voice conversations. I think there's a power to that and something we could embrace.
Yeah,
And with that, I'm complete.
yeah, again, it's like an equation, different situations, you have to plug in all the different, factors, and it'll be different for everybody.
Reciprocity.
And generosity and more viscosity.
Sam's hand is up.
Hey, Stacy, going back to your point about this, what was the word you used?
Algebraic equation.
Yeah, that's right. The equation notion. Okay. That was the point I was trying to embellish on when I said between the thinking and the action is potential choice. And that potential choice you create. Okay. You create.
Say it again. I didn't hear you. That potential
create-
choice, what?
You create that. You create that with your imagination, with your vision, with your intent, with your feelings, everything there. And that was my point. In these different media, in a phone call, I can do it differently than I do on a video call. In a letter, I can do it differently, writing it by script versus a phone call versus typing it out on, in an email. Okay. So each of us has a chance to learn the medium, learn what works, learn to exercise that, and then leverage that as well as one can, based on the skill set and the intended result that we're after. So to me, it's not the medium at fault. It's not whether or not there is video. It's not whether or not there's only audio. It's not whether or not it's only on, a postage stamp, addressed envelope. It's whether or not we know how to use that medium to maximum or potential intended effect. The medium just exists. We each choose whether or not we want to learn how to use it. Over.
One thing that's very different I found is that as opposed to having a meeting session, it's a continuous conversation. And if you don't like this one, there's another one. And there's many servers, many rooms. I don't know how far Barry's explored, but he's been doing this since the beginning. So have you done Clubhouse and Discord and all those things yet, Barry?
I was on Clubhouse, I think maybe 2 or 3 times total since I downloaded the app. But one time Josh was there, so.
I think it's different when you find active servers where there's actual people interacting. So, yeah.
Well, if it's an engaging conversation, if you have a fairly large meeting, it's almost like a town meeting, and town meetings bore me to tears. So if a Clubhouse meeting is like a town meeting, no thanks. But if it's an intimate conversation with 2 or 3 people who are all sort of on the same topic, then it can be very interesting.
Well, you can actually do what Stacy was proposing in I think in a non-evasive or a non-intrusive way, by telling somebody we're not interested in you, but you can be in a conversation with so many people and you can say, well, let's go chat about this between a smaller group of us. And you can actually go and do that because the conversation is continuous. The attention economy at that point is how you want to spend it. It's not, and if you want to sit there in that room and listen to these people argue some more and call each other names and, whatever they're doing, or do you want to actually take this serious conversation and move it somewhere? I found that happens. Like you can have like 7 or 8 rooms in one server. You can go between them. And you'll find you've got one-on-one rooms with a limit of 7 people, and rooms with limits of 99.
What I like was brainstorming sessions where you have 2, 3, maybe 4 people brainstorming how to solve a problem that you're collectively attending.
Well, what you do is you create your own Discord server and you influence some people to come and discuss that with you. And it's sort of like your open everyday Zoom box. And it does have video, I think, if you want it. And it has streaming rooms, you can integrate it with Twitch, and get somebody who knows what they're doing, they can really get you a whole media center, Stacy.
I didn't hear what you were talking about, how to get up.
It's the next generation of conversation, I think, for the privileged anyway, and hopefully for everybody soon. And figuring out how to behave better and navigate these conversations is even a larger challenge. And you can see how my eyebrows kind of raise a little when I see this kind of a dilemma. I've had to have better conversations, right? And that's what Barry's went to automatically. He says, I'll do it if I can have quality conversations. So you can filter, and you can do it because you want to, and you can do it, without, I think, shunning anybody, without the feeling of shunning anybody. You're doing what you want to do because you want to do it, not because you don't want them to do it. They can do what they want. In fact, they're invited usually to come over if they're going to, and if you don't like them, you can mute them and they're gone. Boing. Like people that come in here and do, bomb the beginning of the sessions that we've had sometimes. Those people are trolls, they're gone, right? But you get the regulars who really like to argue about these very passionate topics. So it's interesting. It's a whole new world. And these guys are all like half my age.
Josh's hand is up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if anyone saw the rebranding of Facebook this last week to the word Meta.
Read about it. I didn't watch the session.
That's going to be something in it, Josh.
It's hard to watch, but I would recommend watching it because it's he laid out a vision of, we were a social media company and now we're moving to be a different company, which is a meta company.
Which is conversation.
I'm not going to say anything, just watch it. Just go on YouTube and watch it's quite the presentation. It's hard. The stupid jokes and the way that it was presented is really hard to watch, but the information and the outlining of the mission statement for this meta company that was Facebook is worth watching because it's going to affect billions of people.
Yeah, I could see we're teetering on the precipice of something, and Facebook and some other, like they've tried VR and some other things before, but everything is building up to a critical mass, I think, of this meta or conversation. I know it's drawing me in, and I think it's been drawing Barry in for years.
I was going to say, I grew up on text only back before we had video, when it was all text. And the thing about text was that in some cases the text was synchronous, that it was alternating typing, at the same time. And then there was also the asynchronous. And these text systems, you could use them both ways. So you could keep the scroll back, and if you were absent for a period, you could go back, read the scroll back, catch up to the present time, and then add some stuff. And so I really like the fact that you didn't have to pay attention in real time. You could wait until somebody had, spun out a bunch of material, and then you could go back and read it at your leisure, slower than they typed it or faster than they typed it, and ponder it before you responded. So I like the mix of synchronous and asynchronous text.
Josh?
Yeah, just to answer your question, how I feel about it is I can't even wrap my head around it, mostly because I'm a beta tester for Facebook, and it's allowing you to build a world and an avatar.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just you, but you're in a world that you build, and you can invite people in, and then you can teleport across worlds and meet with people, either with their avatar, which is a representation of a 3D modeling of your face and you. So it looks exactly like you, rendered. They've got it. If you watch the video, it's a little disturbing because you're seeing the pores of people's skin, but it's not really you. It's a virtual representation of you. So some people are calling it your digital twin. So you could have 800 of you traveling to different parts of the quote metaverse of doing 800 different things. And I don't know how to feel. I think that's quite the shift when you clone and copy yourself and send yourself to different meetings across the world. I don't know what that's going to be like.
I guess my question would be, what, if anything, are they doing to not replicate the same harmful effects that Facebook has created. You know, this desire to like tune in at every second, or to count how many likes and how many emojis you're getting, and to try to motivate using anger as opposed, you know, like, I don't want to go
Yeah.
on a tangent.
The-
Josh,
Josh froze. Oh, there you are.
there he
Can
is.
you hear me?
Yes, I
go
can
ahead.
hear you now. We can hear you.
Okay. Zuckerberg did a terrible job at that because he laid out 5 principles to make sure that Facebook doesn't do the things that they're being accused of.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was put people first, but in the 5, he put that as the last one. So I thought that was telling that he's not
Very
actually going to put people
exactly.
first. Yeah, but he tried to pretend that he would have autonomy. You could log in without Facebook because everyone doesn't want to use their social media, and we were going to put people first and try to make it a good experience for people. So I wasn't buying his bullshit, but he tried to lay that out.
So this is the third
That it would
option,
be
the
different.
change. This is different. This is the change. Yeah. The third option,
Yeah.
as opposed to keeping the same or fixing it.
Yeah, take a gander at this video. It's very important
Yeah.
to watch, I think.
Yeah. I've heard about it. I haven't watched it.
How long
I've
is it?
definitely been wondering. It seems like it's a little bit more of this spatial stuff, but the idea of cloning yourself to other meetings and having an agent, an AI agent, that's kind of like the next thing. Like I'm already, speaking my appointments now. I no longer type appointments very much, and everything's notified to me on my digital device. Like my email tool is sort of like this meta hub somewhere that I could check if I wanted to. Anybody that's getting hold of me through email is probably not getting a fast response. Unless I'm expecting something from email, I don't know. I get I think all my important emails, I get notifications. Like, so, and I'm in, and if you're anything like me, you've got an old email account, and you got so many things that you've subscribed to that you got to go back and unsubscribe to. That it's really a game of filtering through your email. Important stuff rises to the top, and anything that comes to your priority mail. But other than that, it's like the world is changing. It used to be email was the hot thing, right? I can remember, well, no, when my kids are going to school, I remembered that I thought it would be a very, efficient thing to be able to communicate with the teachers through email. And that was a no-no. And now it's like standard practice. Like, I don't know if they're into the social medias yet. I think that's one step above, but they have social media things so that the kids do. But yeah, communication has definitely changed. And if Facebook is going to clone us, I don't know. I wonder if this is going to be another Google Glasses, or if this is going to be the one that's going to, be the DOS that turns
they
into
announced
like
the glasses. Yeah, they did the Google Glasses. They have that. They redid them. They're Ray-Bans now with little light when it's recording.
Yep. So there you go. DOS is now here.
Kayla's hand is up.
So, didn't Facebook I don't know if you guys remember when Facebook first started. It was only given to people who were in college. I remember because at the time I wasn't in a university and my friend was, and she was in the University of Irvine, and she goes, "There's another social media platform. It's called Facebook." And so she showed me, and anyways, it was very bare bones, but everybody got excited about it because obviously it's a social media thing, which we're all talking about, right? The only problem with that is it started off like that, and I just feel like, you know, we've jumped so fast. I don't think anybody's had really time enough to just consider the consequences of that, because obviously he did not consider all the shit show that Facebook caused, all across the globe, and it's still kind of causing. And I'm sorry, Josh, I have not watched that, but I've seen it. But you just made me think of, the very beginnings of Facebook. And, even me as a person, having gone through it and still continue going through it as an adult, the good thing is we're all in it, and we've definitely learned from it, but there's still a lot more to learn. And it exposes a side of humanity that's just awful. And I'm wondering when that will kind of catch up, to a lot of the technology that's coming across today. So, anyways, I'm complete.
Yeah. And I just want to ask, what's in it for me? Like, what are they going to try to give me? I'm giving my attention. Is there any, what's the energy put into what they're going to give back to the public? That's my question. And
Sounds
that's
like
where
sounds like an ideal platform to make a knowledge trail from, and to filter people out, and to focus on quality conversations, and maybe get a little entertainment as well while you're building the world that you've built that you don't have in the real world. It's like Minecraft, but for adults.
Yeah, and that might work for, certain people like the ones in this group, but what about the ones that, all the time, I'm watching people that are like talking politics. They don't even know what's going on. They're just getting a meme from somewhere, sending it out. They're being driven by their emotions. How will they be manipulated in this new platform? Because without the manipulation, I'm not hearing any reason they would want to participate unless they can express some unconscious emotion.
Their target audience is probably 12 to 35. The rest of the people just stay on Facebook.
But again, my point is the same. Is it all about grabbing the attention, or
Oh, I
is
see.
there any thought into what they're going to give back?
Yeah, is it going to be an advertisement platform for them to make a bunch of money off of our attention economy? Is what you're saying? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
That was television and radio too. And the movies.
It has to be.
Yeah,
And
I think that's
probably the
fair.
CIA funds it too, because they like to know what your plots are. So CIA is probably funding it. And the KGB and the GBX and all the rest of them. They spy on each other's countries, so they make it legal, right? And they trade notes. That's how they do it. That's the
Josh?
conspiracy. That's the conspiracy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Stacy, the intention is to create marketplaces for the digital world, so you can sell fabrics and clothes. And they showed a new algorithm for the computer where you can see the fabric actually move. So they're going to be selling digital fabric that you put on your avatar, so you can buy the fashions and the clothes and look a certain way. So it's just another capitalistic marketplace in the metaverse. Same thing, same problem. And I got into it early in the beta testing last May, mostly because I want to know what's going to come up. Like, what is, what's my daughter going to be having to live in? What is this new Minecraft, if you will? And I think it's going to be whatever we create it, because it is community based. So they're asking for creators that are not normally creators to come in and create. So they're giving a lot of tools to make it easy for first time creators. So I think it's going to be just another layer like social media was for a lot of people that didn't know how to create YouTube videos and be a YouTuber. They had to learn that creation skill with that medium of a flat screen. Now it has the medium of augmented reality where you're creating in the space, but visual things are coming out. So it's like taking the flat screen and turning it into three-dimensional space. So you're not looking at a screen anymore. It's just popping out of reality. And they showed some examples of that where an artist was in New York and they just made some street art. And the lady says, hey, you guys want to look at it? And she clicks on it, pays a tip to the artist, and pulls that art into another virtual reality space. So everyone in that space is looking at that art from 3 dimensions. So I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen. And I think it's just going to depend on what people do with that medium. One of the cool things I saw was little lights coming off of a piano. So if you're at your piano, it'll show you how to play the piano better. I don't know if you've ever seen these videos where the lights come down and it hits the keys and you hit the keys as the light hit the keys. If you have that with all different instruments, think of playing a guitar, it'll show you where to put your fingering. So there's a lot of beneficial ideas that it could do also with education. I keep talking about the idea of permaculture and creating more value. If you go to your backyard and you touch the tree in the backyard, it could have things that pop out and show you how that tree needs to be taken care of, how much water it needs, by pulling data from, say, NOAA's barometric pressure and what's going on with the tree. I think possibilities are quite amazing of what it could do, but that's not what we'll actually do with it. Same thing with the internet. So yeah, I think it's important that we all get involved and make it do the things we want it to do and talk about it and regulate it in a way that's beneficial to society. Otherwise, from what I see in it right now, it's a mess. It's a bunch of 12 to 15-year-olds just acting stupid. That's what's in the metaverse right now. It's really weird.
Yeah.
So,
You know, I
Yeah.
agree with everything you say. I just want to point out, you know, when I look at Facebook, I look at, so the people in these spaces, and again, they're marketing, but there's a whole, I'll call them the masses that are not really aware of this, that came on because it was social media, and they're the ones that got manipulated and are like stuck in with the negative memes and politics and all of that. That being said, there is another way to use attention. And when I mentioned, and to go to your education point in the beginning of the call, I brought up the limited series Colin Black and White. And I said how I really feel the Black entertainment community is doing a great job of using all the positive attributes you mentioned that could be in this new meta, but giving back, because they're giving an education. They're giving something. It's not a manipulation. It's an opportunity to learn at no cost to the person that's giving their attention. So I just think the shift, you know, somebody's paying for it, but not the people that are consuming the education, that don't have, like, the money, the cycle of the money is distributed differently than in this manipulative kind of scenario, if that makes sense. Tis?
Yeah, this, I will just repeat that we have a Digital Market Act coming up and the Digital Service Act. So Joshua asked for regulations. So the European Union is on it. But the big tech will influence the legislation a bit, but you can follow what is happening in Europe, and then it will have impact on America, I hope. So that's what's happening.
Can I just throw out an idea that, you know, I would love out there? So like these bills that you're talking, I think it's a bill you're talking about, I think. Okay. Here's an opportunity that I think we should be pushing for as citizens of the world. The politicians that are going to be voting on these things, they have to be informed of what's in them as well. Why not put the money into visualizing for everybody and presenting for everybody at the same time, teaching what's in it the same way the politicians have to learn, but allowing us to be watching as well and hearing the questions and really trying to understand what's going on, instead of just hearing a third party tell us a couple of things that isn't even true and we have no opportunity to learn. That's how I think the media and education can serve citizens. And I think we'd pay with our attention. Somebody like a regular ordinary person would be willing to pay with their attention because they want to know.
Yes, it's in discussion, this law, so it will come in the publications. So I just heard it this week, so it will be more in. But thanks for informing me that I can use your idea that it should be more into the public domain, that what is happening in the European Union. So I'll help you to, so I can see. I don't know if I don't have direct influence, but this is recorded, so this will help. So people who see this meeting, that they can.
The more we
understand.
talk about these things, the better.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm leaving now, and I'm going to do some
Thank
shopping.
you. Kayla, you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just gonna check out. I'm making my feijoada, and then I'm going to take my dogs to a Halloween parade.
cute.
I'm dressing the husky as a shark, and then I'm going to be Moana because it's cheap and easy. And then the other one, he's going to be a hot dog.
Oh, cute.
Banana.
Take pictures. Well, I'm sure you will take pictures.
No, it's banana. That's right. It wasn't a hot dog. It just looks like a hot dog. He's going to be a banana.
Banana.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to be checking out as well. But I'll wait for everybody else to say goodbye.
Yep. Have a nice Halloween.
Oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Did we maintain focus? How did the conversation flow? Was moderation helpful?
You memorized all that. Wow, that's impressive.
I would have memorized more had I been using my handwriting to write it down.
Put a big poster up on the wall behind your monitor.
Anybody
I'll
else?
just check out and say, see you guys in the metaverse. I guess it's coming no matter what. So I've been hanging out with this guy, Robert Best. He runs a group called Metacogs,
All right.
and he's been holding his meetings in a 2D like video game.
Oh,
So you log into the video game, you go around the room, and if you go over to a part of the room, the videos pop up and you see each other talking, and you can just walk away from the people, and it's got spatial audio. And then different parts of the room, you can go to other websites and links, and he's been holding his meetings there. And I find it annoying, but it's neat to test out these different ways of communicating, and it's open 24.
nice. You froze.
Dove demonstrated something like that some months ago. I can't remember the name of the one that Dove demonstrated.
Yeah, it was something that you go into a
I think it
room.
was the same
maybe.
one.
You see a 2.5D
What was it
Gather
called?
Town?
What?
of a room, and you can go sit in any one section of the room and hear the people who are near you. But I don't remember the name of the application.
Yeah, if you want, at some point I can put the link in there. We can all meet in there and just to see it. It's worth
Yeah.
it. But I think there's going to be thousands of these new meeting spaces. I'm actually creating garage doors where you can click on people. You send in your garage door, you click on it, and you can take a picture of what's inside, or you can let the nation happen. So
I mean, all of these things have such possible positive applications. It's just bringing the negative into awareness before we're too seeped into it, and wanting to do that in the first place. Not everybody wants to do that or cares to do that.
yeah, my advice to everyone right now is let your imagination run wild and create something that feels good to you, so that when there's stuff that doesn't feel good to you out there, you can invite people back to your place in the metaverse.
Yeah.
You know, just like real life, create a nice home that you can invite people to. So if you're out and about at a party you don't want to be at, you can leave and go home.
That's what I was trying to say with Stacy earlier too. Like you can leave, go back to your space, invite people there without shunning the people who are being so disruptive and disturbing that you've had enough of them. Like you got to leave. Because that'll happen. You're depending on how close you are to the town square, and you can have several different contexts. So there you go. But you isolate yourself when you leave the town square. So sometimes you have to go to the town square to see what's happening. So a certain amount of a thick skin, I think, is required in the new world.
But in this new world, if we're not affecting our physical reality, then what's it all for?
I hope it does. I'm inviting you, Stacy, anytime you want to do graffiti, you can come with me on rooftops in New York, and we have all unlimited
No,
cans.
you know what I want to do? I mean, that might be
Tell me.
fun to do too, but what I really want to do is,
Graffiti.
before we even get to the point of where we're choosing to go, for example, the putting out of memes, there's positive and negative. So memes that have inspirational quotes, I look at those as they're trying to give back to somebody. They're trying to give to the people, hey, look at these wise words, think about how it affects you. Maybe that will help you as you move forward. The other memes that are negative and angry do nothing but grab your attention and then walk away.
Rally up.
Right. We need to, first of all, there needs to be accountability and responsibility. But before you could do that, you have to become aware that it's even a thing. And, you know, we were talking before about when Sam was talking about like that's the space in between making a choice. What wasn't spoken at that point was how emotions affect that space.
Yep.
And if you're aware of them, then you've done the calculations necessary so that they're not really in the way and you are making a clear choice. But many people, and especially the ones that tend to be less concerned with other people, it's not that their heart isn't as good, it's that they've built up all these shells and there's a lack of awareness as to how their own emotions are affecting the way they make their choices. So I'm interested in all people. So before they move into these spaces, I would like to have some sort of a process where we help each other come into that awareness.
I was just going to say there's a campaign going on right now, and I can send you the link later, Stacy. I don't have it at the top of my head,
Sure.
But it's a gentleman who has 20,000 followers on YouTube, and he started a donate campaign. For every dollar you donate, they pick up a pound of trash on the beaches around the world. And so he's been picking up thousands and pounds. And in the video, he says, this isn't enough people. And he snaps his fingers. It's the next day and there's 100 more people. And he snaps his fingers. There's 400 people picking up trash and cleaning up.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing, that is awesome, but it's still extractive. I'm trying to flip that. I'm trying to.
It's not just extractive. You're getting the benefit of being around your community. And he actually showed that they were just picking up the garbage, but then someone came and said, why don't you use these filter things, a professional beach comber? And there was groups of 4. So now you're expanding because you're going somewhere and getting value out of camaraderie and working with groups of 4.
Absolutely.
To pick, not competing, but some people are just sort of going slow. Hey, look, we got 10 bags already. You guys only have 2. And
Also consider,
talks about, yeah, go ahead.
also consider, Stacy, that what Sam had said about having different modes of operation in different conversations. And I've been talking about that forever, that we should experiment some in this one place. Just, you know, and so if we can do different experiments on Zoom, you can imagine the different experiments you can have in different places. And where I find Discord, it can be a type of place. I don't know much about Clubhouse, but I assume it's similar, where people are coming and going and it's open 24/7. And you get into kind of a situation where you have to make these decisions and considerations you're talking about as you go from place to place, not like you're going to a single place. So you're making adjustments from one conversation to another. And you say, when these particular people are together in the same room, nobody can talk. It's just the way it is. So you go to another room or you just listen to them. So there's certain dynamics like that. And some people don't care what you have to say, right? And other people do. So it is a way of, and not having faces and anonymity is another layer, right? So as soon as you start talking about your opinions with other people's opinions and trying to debate, then you're going to come across all kinds of people that you might not want to, what they call dox you. So doxing is a big thing on Discord. Some people are there in their full persona, and other people are hidden behind, and they're, so in this metaverse, have they dealt with that, Josh, with all these different sock accounts, or does it be kind of hard to, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing that's been talked about, identity and avatars from place to place. So you're not losing that. So yes, they're talking about that and interoperability and what it means to be able to go across platforms, and then fighting for, you know, the rights of your digital avatar.
Yeah, your
So,
digital,
yeah, they're talking
your digital
about-
identity and how you can make money.
Well,
I got, sorry.
how you can keep your assets that you buy
That too. Yeah, but you're saying that
across
you could,
platforms.
sorry, I think you're lagging. We might be over talking each other. But yeah, there's a market element to make it easier, like Shopify or your own little eBay kind of thing. Is that within context like fungible tokens, or is that like trying to replace advertising on Amazon or eBay or whatever? Because that's, I think. Oh yeah, you're still there. Okay, you just
Yeah,
go ahead.
just to let you know, Colin, I went to Fig 8 and I asked them the same question when they hadn't monetized yet, when there was no way to monetize on Facebook. They hadn't even made ads. And I asked them how they're going to do it. They had no idea back then. And I remember them stumbling over payments and gateways and how that's going to work. And then 5 years later, they went public and did it all off of advertising in the newsfeed. But at that time, they didn't know what they were doing. And it's very similar to today. It's not even, they're saying 10 years out. This thing isn't going to be built for 10 years.
But I do see it as an
over the next
extension
10
of,
years we out.
I do see that extension of, instead of me talking to Google and asking Google what the temperature is, or, at that level of robot, you turn into the Google speaker with a script that you have for other people, and you become the Google agent or the bot, basically. So that's what's happening. The botness is going one level deeper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
Makes sense.
and I'll invite you, Colin. I invited Barry. There's a group of people on Clubhouse that are calling it super reality. So it's out now. It's superreality.com. And if you want to join, they're having those discussions of how to build those digital agents. And they're building Carl Sagan and an apple tree right now. Those are the two things they're building. So feel free to come and build any type
Sorry.
of build that can discuss and talk.
Did you say you sent the link? Is the link here in the chat or the link in Messenger? I could look.
I didn't send a link, but you can go to superreality.com.
Okay.
And I think my phone's about to die.
Well, nice seeing you, Josh. I'll put that link in the chat for anybody who's
Good to
listening.
see you guys. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
All right.
Everybody have a good Halloween.
You too. There are too many people at the
Halloween,
door.
Barry.
Won't be any trick-or-treaters this year, will there? No.
Go find out.
What a weird world we live in. See you later.
Bye-bye.